Welcome to the Women Lighthouse podcast, your friendly guide through all the ups and downs of life. We're here to remind you that every woman has the strength to take charge of her journey and make her dreams come true. Each week, we'll share heartwarming stories and helpful tips from amazing women who have faced their own challenges and come out stronger. Tune in, get inspired, and let's start this exciting journey towards achieving your dreams together. The Women Lighthouse, your guide to a brighter tomorrow. Hello ladies, you're welcome to today's episode of the Women Lighthouse podcast. It's great to have you on the show today. So today we're continuing our series on homeschooling, and we're going to be talking about how to get started with homeschooling. So if you haven't listened to our previous episodes, please be sure to check them out where I share my homeschooling journey. So let's get right into today. We have Opeyemi here with us today, and she's going to be telling us about how she started her homeschooling journey and guiding you through step by step what you need to do to begin your homeschooling journey. Opeyemi, you are welcome.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here again.
Yeah, always nice to have you around. Meanwhile, I don't think I've told you guys how I met Opeyemi. We actually attended primary school together, but I never knew her in person. But it was actually when we were part of, I think, a virtual community on, reading, something about reading fluently. Yeah, so that's the importance of community. So we met there. I think someone asked a question and she answered and now mentioned that in her primary school, and I think she now mentioned the primary school, and I was like, wow, look at my fellow alma mater here. And that's how we kicked off our relationship. So if I tell you I've never met Opeyemi in person, it will be surprising, right? But that's how it is, and we're great friends, and it turns out that we are both homeschooling, and that's why she's here today. So Opeyemi, tell us, let's get right into the conversation for today. How did you begin your homeschool journey? What were the things you did after you decided that you wanted to homeschool your kids, and how did you start the homeschooling experience?
So the first thing I would recommend is to diagnose. By diagnosis, I mean you try to research into the children you have, because for some people, they might have more than one. So you look at each child, you look at their strengths, you look at their weaknesses, you look at their learning styles, you look at, okay, what classes are they in? Then I think the next step will be looking at, can I teach these children myself at those levels where they are, considering all those factors I told you to look at? Would you be able to properly tutor them, or you need to employ someone? Now, employing the services of someone may not mean you'll be paying the person monthly. It may not mean the person will come every day. Those are part of the diagnostic checks you would have to do. Then you also need to look at how to get the appropriate materials. Yes, you might want to get textbooks and workbooks, but will that be sufficient for your learner or your learners, as the case may be? You also have to look at the environment, because for learning to take place, the environment must be safe and secure. You cannot be hearing gunshots all around and expect the learner to concentrate, right? So the kind of environment you are also matters. Some people, they stay in an area where there is always party, maybe there is a clubhouse beside them and stuff, and they're always making noise. So their children may not be able to concentrate in that kind of environment. So those considerations might now take you to, okay, we will learn in the house, or I would look for somewhere that I'll be taking the kids to learn and stuff like that. And like I said, you also have to consider the work schedule of both parents and the work schedule of the major tutor. If I am a full-time working mother and I have to tutor my children, then that should be considered when I want to, start my homeschooling. Then another thing to put in place is still on the environment, depending on the child. Do I need a specific area as their classroom, or we'll just learn all around the house? For example, even though I have a classroom corner in my sitting room, my first child is not the sit on the chair, put your book on the table kind of person. He prefers to lie down and write, or kneel down and write. I keep correcting him, but it is more of his nature. He feels more relaxed and free when he's in a kneeling position or in a lying down position compared to sitting and writing. So those are part of the things you put in place. Then another important thing is curriculum. But for curriculum, it may not be a strict curriculum like that. It might just be like highlight points of things that you want your child to know at a certain stage. For example, I can say by the time my baby is 2 years old, I want him to be able to identify the parts of the body. By the time he's 2 years old, I want him to be able to identify at least four two-dimensional shapes. I want him to know at least the primary colors. That is also a curriculum. I'm setting the standard. And then I would look at it that, okay, how do I want to test his knowledge of these things? For the 2-year-old, I want to be able to ask him and he responds. I don't expect a 2-year-old to start writing exam questions. You understand? Even for me, my own personal this thing is like my 6-year-old. I feel it is not until he answers in the script. How can he describe this thing for me? Okay, if I ask him what is a family and what are the qualities of a good family, he should be able to explain in his own words. For me, that is when I know that learning has taken place. So all those things have to be considered in the curriculum. It's not just for me to say, okay, I want to follow National Education Research Development Council's curriculum, the exact way they wrote it, or I want to follow Lagos State's scheme of work the exact way it is written. No. As an homeschooler, I need to consider how that curriculum fits into my own family values. Because one of the beauty of homeschooling is you have the time to portray, to imprint your family values in the child. It is not just what the school or what the district wants your child to know. For example, I am teaching my children about Islam. I am teaching them about the Yoruba culture. Lagos State scheme of work accommodates that Yoruba culture thing there. If you look at the history curriculum, you will be impressed. You understand, from primary one upwards. So as an homeschooler, you have to consider what are the things I want my child to learn and which curriculum best suits that child. But like I said, you don't need to just say, okay, it's just Lagos State curriculum, let me just stick to it. You yourself can put down benchmarks of the things you want to achieve and follow.
So while you were speaking, I was just like looking back to how it was when I started, and after I decided I wanted to homeschool. So basically, for me, what I did, the first thing was to research, because I didn't really know much about homeschooling. I just knew a little from what I had heard from someone. who I listened
Okay.
to on a podcast. So I needed to know more. And again, my major challenge at that point was the fact that I was working outside the home. My husband wasn't really familiar with what it was. So I knew I was going to be the primary person who would be supervising the kids when it came to their learning. So I needed to learn I'm someone that loves to learn from the experiences of others rather than attempt and make mistakes and learn from my mistakes. I would prefer to go and find out how others have done it and learn from that. So for me, what I did first was to research. I researched, I read a lot of books, watched a lot of videos, which I know you have mentioned. Then also, it depends on the uniqueness of things. If you've never exposed your child to traditional school and you just want to start with homeschooling, that would be different from someone who has exposed the child to traditional school and wants to transition to homeschooling. And this is going to be our conversation in the next episode, how to transition from traditional schooling to homeschooling. So we'll talk more in details about that. So you need to understand the uniqueness of what your situation is, because those two situations have different ways of approaching them. Then another thing I did, by the time I listened to a lot of and did a lot of research, one of the things I kept hearing was know your why, because there are times you would encounter challenges during the course of homeschooling and you may want to give up. You may want to quit. So, but when you know your why, the reason why you decided to homeschool in the first place, it helps you decide and reevaluate if it's something you want to continue or not. So one thing I did was to write out, why do I want to homeschool? And I think I've shared that. So you need to understand what your why is and have a vision also for your homeschooling. Just like in a school or an organization, they have the mission statements, they have the vision statements. We encourage that even as a family, you should have your vision for and your mission for your homeschooling. You need to know what is your priority in your homeschooling. For some people, it can be academic excellence. They want to focus more on the academics. So that would determine the kind of curriculums they choose, like you rightly said, Opeyemi. And also for some people, it may be exploration. Like for me, that's my own priority. Like, let's explore. Like the homeschooling experience, because of the kind of kids I have, they're outdoor kids. They love to explore, and I think they've taken after me. So I try to ensure that it's not just academics for us, it's about exploring, getting to explore our environment, explore life generally. And also for some people, it may be skill acquisition. They've noticed that, okay, if I take my child to traditional school, they may not have sufficient time to focus on a skill that you've observed they are good at. Maybe they are good in a particular, or maybe playing of football, or good in singing, or good in whatever skill it is, entrepreneurship, and you want to focus more on that skill. So going to a regular school may not give that opportunity. So if you know the priority of your homeschooling, it helps to direct you on how to structure your homeschooling. So I think that's another way to get started. Know what your priorities for your homeschooling are. Then another thing that I also had to consider when I wanted to start was, am I going to homeschool all year round? Or was I going to follow the school calendar strictly? That's the way we have first term, second term, third term, and you have holidays in between. And it starts from like September and I think ends in, is it July or so? So for me, I had to consider that. I had to consider the fact that I'm a working mom, and homeschooling strictly by the school calendar will not work. So I now decided I was going to homeschool all year round. So we don't have any structured homeschooling. Oh, these are the days we homeschool. Basically, every day, Monday to Sunday. But when Monday to Sunday is not, and it doesn't have to be bulky work like it is in traditional school, even if it's 1 or 2 subjects we're learning on a daily basis, but we're learning something. But even if I can't make 7 days a week, my target is it has to be at least 4 times in a week. So when you understand whether you want to homeschool all year round or not, it helps you also to structure your homeschool plan. Then another thing that helped me when I wanted to start homeschooling, this pressure of comparing with what's going on in traditional school. I had to remove myself from that pressure of trying to say, oh, will my son meet up with what's happening in traditional school? So for me, I got the curriculum that I wanted to use. And when I say curriculum, I'm using the national curriculum. So since it was already in traditional school, we just continued using the curriculum they were using. But once it started a new session, that's a new academic year, I got the basics, which is numeracy, literacy, writing, and reading, so phonics. So those were the things I focused on. Then also creative arts, a coloring book, and all that. So it's also important that you consider that. Don't put yourself in that pressure of wanting to meet up or equate what you're doing with what is being done in traditional school. Just create your own structure and work with it. Then another thing I had to address when I got my homeschooling journey started is that pressure, that opposition or discouraging statements from people. It has a way of getting to you sometimes. Sometimes you wonder when your kids are not in school and people see, why are you not in school? What's going on? What am I going to say? So that pressure also is something you will need to address. And that's by being comfortable with what you're doing. This is a choice you have made. You know why you are doing it. So get comfortable with it. You don't necessarily have to explain to people why if you are not comfortable explaining to them. So just take it one day at a time, and as it comes, you learn along the way. So this is Opeyemi's experience with how she started her homeschooling and the things she suggests you consider when you want to begin your homeschooling journey. And this is also my thoughts on the topic. So I hope you've been able to pick 1 or 2 things that can help you in beginning your homeschooling journey. Thank you for tuning in today. Next episode, we'll be addressing how to transition from a traditional school setting to a homeschooling setting. And Opeyemi will be with us again. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Women Lighthouse podcast. We really hope today's episode has given you some great tools, resources, and a boost of confidence to take charge of your journey. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. You can also follow us on our social media handle for even more tips and a wonderful community that's all about supporting your growth. Join us next time for more uplifting stories and encouraging insights. Until we meet again, keep shining bright, stay inspired, and embrace your unique path to a better tomorrow.